Good afternoon and welcome to Hudson Institute's New York Book Forum to celebrate the publication of Escape from North Korea, the Untold Story of Asia's Underground Railroad by Senior Fellow Melanie Kirkpatrick. I'm Ken Weinstein, President and CEO of Hudson Institute, and I'd also like to welcome our audience watching at home on BookTV, and also I want to especially thank our friends at C-SPAN for covering today's events. There are a couple of guests present today whom I'd like to acknowledge. The Consul General of South Korea in New York, Ambassador Sehyo Son, who is here, and I would also like to acknowledge the presence of the Japanese Deputy Consul General in New York, Deputy Consul General Kawamura. In addition, I'd also like to note the presence of several Hudson Institute trustees, our Vice Chair, Sarah Stern, and our trustee, Jack David, who has a special interest in this book, as he was the first person to read it and as he is married to the author. And we're grateful for Jack's service on our board and also for his involvement in this important book. Lastly, I want to thank today's distinguished panelists, Jay Lefkowitz, Senior Partner at Kirkland & Ellis, who was President George W. Bush's Special Envoy on Human Rights for North Korea, Adrian Hong, the Managing Director of Pegasus Strategies and the founder of Liberty in North Korea, a nonprofit that works for North Korean human rights and the protection of North Korean refugees, and Joseph Kim, who is a remarkable individual who himself escaped from North Korea at the age of 13. Now, Hudson Institute was founded 51 years ago as a forward-looking international policy research organization designed to think creatively about how to achieve a better future in the face of the then unprecedented challenges of the early 1960s. Though the world has changed in significant ways since those days, our fundamental way of looking at it has not. Since the days of the founding of Hudson Institute, our work has been shaped in part by the belief that the dedicated efforts of a few determined individuals can make a significant difference in the fight for freedom and human rights. And the book that we will be discussing today, Escape from North Korea, the Untold Story of Asia's Underground Railroad, embodies this concept. This highly anticipated volume by Hudson Senior Fellow Melanie Kirkpatrick has just been published by Encounter Books, and it has already received very favorable reviews in the Wall Street Journal, the Weekly Standard, Publishers Weekly, the Asia Times, and in the South Korea press. And the reason is very simple. Melanie Kirkpatrick offers both a deeply moving yet highly analytic account of the experiences of North Koreans who risk everything to escape the world's worst tyranny. In addition, she talks about the incredibly dedicated Christian missionaries and Korean Americans who helped them in their flight to freedom. Now, those of us who work in the policy world in Washington sometimes risk becoming so habituated to the news that, in a sense, our senses are dulled and we no longer recognize the human consequences of tyranny and of various public policies. And this book, Escape from North Korea, is the perfect antidote to that phenomenon. Melanie does an absolutely masterful job introducing us to some absolutely extraordinary individuals. Kim Chil-wong, for example, the first pianist of the Pyongyang Symphony, who escapes to China, is arrested 3 times before he finally makes it to freedom, all because he simply wanted the freedom to play the music of his choice. She gives us the story of Stephen Kim, a Long Island businessman who was in China working for Walmart, attending an underground church in Shenzhen, who happens across a couple of North Korean refugees, and he gets so moved by their plight that he decides that he's going to, as a part-time activity, help these North Korean refugees escape from China. He gets arrested for his activities. He spends 3 years in jail before returning to the United States and deciding to dedicate his entire life to saving North Koreans. You cannot possibly read this book without being profoundly moved and without, frankly, being moved to tears in just about every single chapter. And the stories are incredible. We'll go into greater detail on some of these momentarily. Melanie Kirkpatrick, whom Jay Lefkowitz will introduce shortly, uses the best of her journalist sensibilities, honed in nearly 3 decades at the Wall Street Journal, to highlight the human side of the tragedy of North Korea. and we are deeply proud at Hudson to claim her as a colleague, and we look forward to her comments today. Copies of Escape from North Korea are available for purchase at today's event for $20, and Melanie Kirkpatrick will be glad to sign your copy. It's also available online at Amazon.com. I urge all of you, and at other online booksellers, I urge all of you to read it, discuss it, and to read it again. I now have the special pleasure of introducing my friend Jay Lefkowitz. Jay, as I noted earlier, is a senior partner at Kirkland & Ellis here in New York City. Jay is a well-known commodity in the Washington policy world, having served with distinction in 2 different administrations as Cabinet Secretary under President George H.W. Bush and as Deputy Director of Domestic Policy under George W. Bush. He is known throughout Washington as a keen policy intellectual with an incredible ability to synthesize complex issues effectively and with unparalleled efficiency. And Jay has written with great authority on issues ranging from stem cell research to Jewish voting patterns in presidential elections to human rights in North Korea in such publications as the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post. For our purposes today, it should be noted that Jay served as Special Envoy for Human Rights in North Korea under President George W. Bush, and in that position, Jay was known for his forthright criticism not simply of the North Korean tyranny, but also of China and occasionally of South Korea for failing to do more to assist North Korean refugees in their flight to freedom. And Jay did not spare criticism either of the folks in Foggy Bottom. He was well known for criticizing State Department policies that seemed more concerned about preserving the 6-party talks on North Korea's nuclear program than on stopping the nuclear program itself or in promoting human rights in that country. And without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm Hudson Institute welcome to Jay Lefkowitz.
Thank you, Ken, for that very warm and gracious introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today for what promises to be a fascinating discussion because we have 3 really exemplary presenters. I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, Melanie Kirkpatrick, first. She'll give some introductory remarks about the book, what influenced her to write the book, and some of the salient features from the book. And then I'll introduce our other 2 presenters, Adrian Hung and Joseph Kim. And then after they speak, we'll open the room up to questions. Melanie, as many of you know, is now a senior fellow, along with her Hudson Institute husband, Jack, at the Hudson Institute. But before that, Melanie was, for many years, a leading editorial page writer at the Wall Street Journal editorial board. She wrote editorials and articles ranging on really all subjects, from domestic to foreign policy. But in her role as deputy editor of the Wall Street Journal editorial page, she had a keen focus on foreign policy, and in particular really took to the issue of North Korea human rights like really no one else in the American media has taken to it. Earlier in her career, Melanie spent about 10 years in Asia working for the Wall Street Journal Asia in Hong Kong, and before that she actually had another gig where she lived and worked in Tokyo, I believe. Melanie received her bachelor's degree from Princeton University and a master's degree from the University of Toronto. The book that Melanie has written is absolutely riveting. It really reads more like a Nelson DeMille or a Tom Clancy thriller than it does a work of nonfiction. She tells an incredibly powerful story about a human rights and a human tragedy, the tragedy that really is modern North Korea. She tells the story through the eyes of many of the participants in this drama. The refugees, one of whom, Joseph Kim, is here with us today, one of only about 175, 180 North Korean refugees who have actually made it to the United States in safety. She tells the story through the eyes of the workers on the Underground Railroad, largely people involved in Christian relief organizations, both here in the United States and in northeastern China, who work clandestinely and at great risk to their own lives, trying to open up a channel for North Korean refugees to escape. North Korea, as you know, is probably the most repressive regime in the world at this stage. It is a